A revolutionary army, fresh from victory in a brutal civil war, was moving west with confidence. Its leaders believed they were not just advancing across land, but carrying an idea, a new political system they thought would spread across Europe. And in their path stood a newly reborn country, still fragile, still organizing itself, and facing one of the most powerful forces of the time. So how did Poland stop the Red Army? How did a country that had just regained independence manage to push back a much larger force? And why did this war matter far beyond its own borders? To understand this, we need to go back to the end of World War I. For more than a century before 1918, Poland did not exist as an independent country. Its territory had been divided between powerful neighbors, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. But when World War I ended and these empires collapsed or weakened, Poland re-emerged as an independent state. It was a moment of opportunity, but also of danger. The borders of this new Poland were not clearly defined. Different regions had mixed populations, and multiple countries had competing claims. At the same time, to the east, Russia was going through its own transformation. After the Bolshevik Revolution, the Bolsheviks took power and began to build a new Soviet state, but they were still fighting a civil war against opposing forces. As they gained strength, their ambitions grew beyond their own borders. For Soviet leaders, the spread of revolution was not limited to one country. They believed that revolution could move westward into Europe, especially into countries like Germany, where political instability was already present, and Poland stood directly in the way. This made conflict almost unavoidable. By 1919, fighting had already begun along the eastern borders. Both sides were trying to secure territory and strengthen their positions. Poland, under the leadership of Józef Pilsudski, aimed to push its borders eastward and create a buffer zone against future threats. The Soviet Union side aimed to regain control over former imperial territories and potentially push further west. At first, the war was fluid. Front lines shifted constantly. Both sides launched offensives and counteroffensives. Sometimes Poland advanced deep into contested areas. Other times, Soviet forces pushed back. In 1920, the conflict reached a critical turning point. Polish forces launched a major offensive toward Kiev, hoping to secure influence in Ukraine and weaken Soviet control in the region. For a moment, it seemed successful. Polish troops entered Kiev, and the operation looked like a bold step forward. But the response came quickly. The Red Army reorganized and launched a massive counteroffensive. This time, they pushed west with speed and momentum. Polish forces were forced to retreat. The situation became increasingly dangerous for Poland as Soviet troops advanced closer to its core territories. Soon, the Red Army was approaching Warsaw, the capital of Poland. At this moment, the war seemed almost decided. Many observers believed that Poland would fall. Some expected that once Warsaw was captured, Soviet forces might continue moving westward into Europe. The stakes were now much higher than a regional conflict. This battle could influence the future direction of the continent. But then, something unexpected happened. In August 1920, Poland launched a counterattack that would later be known as the Miracle on the Vistula. Instead of simply defending Warsaw, Polish forces executed a bold and risky plan. They concentrated troops for a sudden strike against the exposed flank of the advancing Soviet army. Timing and coordination were critical. The attack caught Soviet forces off guard. As Polish units pushed forward, they disrupted communication and supply lines. The momentum of the Red Army slowed, then began to collapse. What had looked like a near-certain Soviet victory turned into a chaotic retreat. Within days, the situation completely reversed. Soviet forces which had been advancing toward Warsaw were now pulling back under pressure. Polish troops regained territory and pushed the front line eastward once again. The outcome of this battle changed the direction of the entire war. After this turning point, the conflict gradually moved toward negotiations. In 1921, the Treaty of Riga was signed, officially ending the war. It established borders between Poland and Soviet Russia and brought a temporary peace to the region. But the impact of the war went far beyond those borders. For Poland, it was a defining moment, A newly independent state had managed to defend itself against a powerful opponent and secure its position in Europe. For Soviet Russia, the defeat was a setback. The hope of rapidly spreading revolution westward was delayed. Internal consolidation became a priority. And for Europe as a whole, the outcome mattered deeply. If the Red Army had captured Warsaw and continued advancing, the political landscape of Europe might have developed very differently. Instead, the war created a kind of barrier, at least for a time, between Soviet influence and the rest of Europe. The Russo-Polish War shows how quickly situations in history can change. At one moment, one side seems unstoppable. At the next, a single strategic decision can shift the entire outcome. It also highlights the importance of leadership, planning, and timing in warfare. But like many wars, it also came with a human cost. Soldiers on both sides faced harsh conditions, long marches, and intense fighting. Civilians in contested areas experienced disruption, uncertainty, and loss. The political outcomes often overshadow the personal stories of those who lived through it. Looking back, the war is remembered not just for its battles, but for what it represented: a clash between two visions of the future, a struggle over borders, identity, and influence, and a moment when a newly reborn country managed to hold its ground against a powerful force moving towards it. So when we ask how Poland stopped the Red Army, the answer lies in a combination of factors: strategic planning, leadership decisions, timing, and perhaps a bit of unpredictability, because history is rarely decided by strength alone. Sometimes it turns on a single moment when everything changes.